we'll get to that too. And I want to cover like the last kind of chain network here. So Vlad, my question to you is, I guess give us an overview of like what's happening in DeFi and Ton ecosystem, and kind of what do you think the challenges that you have are for your check?
Hello everyone. Just looking for. If you don't mind, I will speak for myself because my last working day in Cloud Foundation going to be 8th of July.
Yeah, you kind of.
It's not yet. It's not yet. But it's going to be 8th of July. So please do not record it. I'm joking. In general, let's say, actually from the year of experience with the Telegram and the Fund Foundation, the thing is that we do have this amazing user base in Telegram, that one of the biggest challenges is the user acquisition funnels and how to acquire them into the DeFi itself. And then the next thing, that's the DeFi for this audience, very complex, even more complex than for us, even more complex than Pendle Finance and Plumberland for Ethereum OG users. Why? Because actually if you will show to average Telegram user EVA Finance, that's a lending protocol on Ton, and Aave, that's just 4 capital letters for them. And the problem is they didn't know what means lending and borrowing. But what they know how to use banking applications, they know how to use neobanks in those countries. And a lot of these DeFi tools will be simplified. And one of the goals right now, actually one of the points, is creating a unified banking application on-chain with ability to save money in DeFi, for example, some strategies, and also with the ability to play with card and doing all of the things what you are able to do with just a simple one, neobanks, because the Telegram already pre-installed on your phone and you don't need to install any other applications, you can just open the media. So this is one of the biggest challenge right now, and this is one of the biggest opportunity right now across the Ton DeFi. It's onboarding those users into the financial apps, not into the gaming or the top tier, but in the financial apps.
So maybe just a quick question for my understanding, because I don't have a lot of context. Are people in the Telegram kind of ecosystem aware of DeFi apps from Ethereum and other blockchains, and like, are they asking for same experiences?
No, they didn't. They didn't aware even about, like, most of them didn't aware about the DeFi tools in general, and they didn't aware about this terminology, like even interest rates.
Normal finance application.
Yes, normal finance application. And if you're using any kind of neobank, you didn't know where is the money sitting and what they do with those money and where is the interest coming from. Is it real from borrows or they just, doing the Ponzi? You didn't know this. So because of this, all of those front ends explanations, they just not ready yet for this audience, and it should be simplified. That the values there is not shown in the right way. It's even not shown in the right way in a whole DeFi industry. Because for who it's made, for the OGs, like
you need to be pretty technical to understand.
Yeah, you could do your own player versus player. And that's mostly it. So, for example, my biggest passion right now is the Llama Land of curve, and there's the best place when you can do leverage longs, like 11x leverage with 4% interest rate that you will pay on your borrow. But if you go to those front ends, there is literally nightmare. There's like a spaceship controlling center. And that's the problem. And even Michael says, like, there's an amazing product, but nobody uses it. Why? Because that's too difficult. That's really too difficult. Okay, Pendle Finance, the biggest problem of the Pendle Finance, if you speak with the guys from Pendle, they say, like, nobody understands what we're doing. There's a bunch of guys from Athena, they are doing the looping, and that's it. Okay, there is a market for Athena, 150 millions. Okay, there is also a bunch of guys from Engine Layer doing the same. And then a bunch of guys from Lida doing the same, and that's it. If you will go to regular DeFi, even OG, and ask, hey bro, what do you do with Pendle? He wouldn't. He say like, hey, there's a UT and V token. And then you ask, okay, what's UT token? He said, I don't know. So that's the problem.
Okay, interesting. I do want to get back to that, but I want to get back to you two, which is going to try to go up the stack. And starting kind of with Pedro, like, what kind of have you noticed problems with cross-chain kind of communication as you kind of designed Wallet Connect and making it easy for others to actually understand states from different chains?
I mean, when we're building Wallet Connect, we're trying to make sure that every wallet is served as much as possible. So we had to create a lot of abstraction layers. And one thing that was very clear is that because early on there was like this VC that had this thesis around the fat protocol thesis, that believed that like the protocol that or the network that had the most users would win, then everyone started competing to have that network to beat the fat protocol thesis. But realistically, that was not coming from consumer demand. In fact, we are trying to build a world where the user knows its identity, whether that's a username, an email, or just an address, and then thinks about assets independent from the chain. So actually moving away from this chain-centric perspective to be cross-chain is very important, but everyone is still trying to compete to win over the VC mindset of which network is going to win. But it's not the network is going to win. It's the assets and the app. And that could be living in 3 different chains at the same time.
Oh, and that gets very complicated very fast. So I'll let the indexers of my balances tell me how.
No, I actually wanted to first to add a little bit on Pedro's point, I think, because on one hand, there's like this huge demand to like launch new chains, new networks. We have like hundreds already at this point, this L2s. And yeah, interop is just not there. It's like slow, it's complex, as like Ian was explaining. And funnily enough, that creates very strong network effects for chains that are already here. So actually builders are incentivized to build on top of chains that have most users. And like Base right now is probably half of all transactions in all EVMs. So like the distribution is pretty exponential. And it's like almost impossible for new chains to attract real users, but they still launch new chains just because the thesis is there and like we kind of want to scale Ethereum, but like in reality it doesn't even scale. So we have the friction, we have like a handful of chains that actually have the users and the dApps. So it seems like just like pretty broken fundamentally at this point.
So are you saying that instead of solving interoperability, we just wait out 2 more years so the chains just die and we'll have 5 and we don't need to worry about this?
I mean, it could be one way to go, I guess. Well, then we are back to square one, solving scalability of these 2 chains, I guess.
That's fair, but I guess the question here we're trying to get to is, it's clear that, at least that's my conclusion from all the answers, it's clear that we're not going to see any less number of chains coming up anytime in the future, and that number is only going up. We can maybe bet on it not doubling every year, it'll only be 40% next year, but it's clearly going to be higher than the year before. And you kind of have to have a solution now that lets you transfer and track and just send between chains as fast as possible and as securely as possible. Is that where it's going on July 9th? I'm just kidding. That's a great product, so there you go. This is a great advertisement. So what are ways that we know now that help us simplify this experience of just...
I think it would be...
Get this on the recording.
Yeah, the jumper exchange. It's obviously, you could use it. There is a different ways how you could do the swaps. I think if the chain is not on jumper exchange, maybe you should think, will you need to transfer the money there or not?
I really think you're going there on the 9th. But, Pedro, what you were saying?
Well, since there's such an attraction to launching new chains, I would love to see like kind of us moving into a world where we're thinking about tokens rather than chains. So we put each token into a single chain, and then our goal is to have these tokens like bridge into applications from the same chain. So imagine, let's say, pick one token like Pepe chain. So if Pepe chain has its own Pepe token, if you want to like deposit on Aave or Morpho or Pendle, then you have to always deposit from the same chain. So you always track the balance from there. And then there's a bigger focus on cross-chain interoperability because we move into an app chain and token chain world, and everyone is going to optimize for themselves.
There is an OFT standard in layer 0. It works like this. and the OFT standard in the wormhole, and the OFT standard in the chain link. So it means the token is deployed on their, let's say, layer, and gonna be minted and burned in any other chain. It's like, imagine you will have USDC burned in one chain and minted in another chain, and all of this is gonna be made by USDC, not by any kind of relayer or someone else. So there is already, but the problem is that it's not implemented across the chains yet.
So Wallet Connect has launched a token and is wormhole compatible, and it does use this system. But I would like to see a world where like each token issuer owns their own cross-chain for their token.
So how does that work practically? This is a very cool idea. This is new to me. So you're saying that there will be chains that are fully EVM chains, but they only manage a single token and restrict access to everything else?
I mean, if you think about what is Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a network to manage a single asset.
Right.
That's all it does.
But it's
Like,
because of lack of programmability, not because the
but
intention.
it does come as a
No,
feature.
no,
right?
I agree with you. I'm just trying to understand, like, what does this mean practically? So you are fundamentally restricting any other activity beyond just transfers in and out of that particular asset.
The reason we haven't focused on cross-chain interoperability is because we try to shove everyone into the same chain.
Okay.
Because we are still stuck in this fat protocol thesis where we think one chain is going to win.
So how does that simplify anything when you now have that one chain talk to other chains?
When you actually focus on each token being its own chain and each app being its own chain, then you're not trying to make the best chain to win them all. You're trying to build the communication layer that wins them all.
But is the communication layer different than what you would have to do now? Because I can just say, we have a generalized chain, but we'll only let you transfer one asset in and out. So what's the technical difference?
What we actually need is to make layer 2 chains get a real advantage of being layer 2s. We need special instructions to get access and get ownership information from layer 1 and other things. Because now we have layer 2s. They have native bridge. It's much more safe than any other bridge which was mentioned or would be mentioned here because security of this bridge is the same as security of the whole layer 2, actually. That's why it's called native bridge. And we never saw native bridge hacked yet. So we will probably see they would be hacked maybe with the chains. But yeah, we actually need more instructions for layer 2s to get real benefit from being layer 2 to layer 1 as Ethereum. We need those L2
He's in favor, right?
slots, L2 calls, whatever. I don't want to taking care of ownership on every chain. I just want to own things on layer 1 and just enjoy this ownership on any layer 2. I don't want to replicate my multi-sig on every chain, for example. This makes no sense.
But that would actually work, right? Because if we're actually having each chain focus on each functionality, then that chain could expose cross-chain functions that are specific for that, right?
And this would not work in asynchronous way. I mean, what you could build in asynchronous way if you would have separate chain for Uniswap. Only swaps. But if you want to make position in Aave with leverage or something, you need to swap borrowed funds, but you can't do this on the same chain. So, okay, let's have Compound on one chain, Uniswap on another chain, ENS on third chain, and for sure, multi-sig on another chain. This would be perfect DeFi without any interoperability. The greatest thing about DeFi is interoperability, and it only appeared when all those projects were on the same environment, same sandbox.
Right, because you just define different applications on the same operating system.
Yeah, we have to find ways to make them closer to each other, not to separate every token to every chain, separate chain.
But it is the fact that we challenge them being in the same chain that actually will make people actually research about cross-chain interoperability. The reason no one actually puts effort in cross-chain interoperability is because, as you said, the majority of transactions happen in one or two chains. So why do we even need cross-chain interoperability for two chains?
I would actually disagree on the last point, though. I feel like there's so much effort and so many teams trying to solve that, which actually kind of creates its own problem because like there's no single standard. Like we can't agree. Like there are 5 teams trying to solve intents. I think like 1inch guys have their own system, like Uniswap X, there's CoSwap, there's like dozen of teams kind of solving the same problem slightly differently. And that just like, I don't know if it solves anything in the end, because like now we as a wallet, we need to sort of decide who to pick, or we start to aggregate. And because we have so many
you have to
approaches,
deal with every case.
exactly. And then because we have so many solutions to the same problem, it actually doesn't really solve anything in
But
the
that's
end.
good. That's because no one invented yet something like really good thing. I mean, there are a lot of things which are not.
Except the
best.
1inch guys, right?
Yeah. I mean, competition here is good because when you will see something is better than others, this would be obvious to you. But if you would not have so many implementations, you would not get this great implementation.
So here's a very nuanced interpretation of what you said. Oh, sorry. Please finish your point. I'll comment after.
No, you finish your.
So I was going to say is like, that's one way to look at it. The other way I kind of see what all of you are trying to say is, I wish the chain was itself more prescriptive on what should happen instead of us coming up with other solutions on top, which is kind of in line with what Pedro wants, which is, hey, let's only restrict this type of activity and behavior on this network. Or we say, hey, let's go all in on making sure the OP stack and the Arbitrum stack and Polygon stack all have only one way to bridge assets between one chain to the L1, and we just only have everybody opt in or not do anything at all.
Look, there are going to be less chains. That's it. Because the market is too young. I remember how many, maybe you remember how many mobile operators was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. There was so many. Right now it's how much? Like Vodafone and a couple more. In each country, maybe 2 or 3. So all of the markets, they are leading to be in a monopoly or a duopoly, which means that we can even assume right now. Have you ever remember Moonriver or Moonbeam? Where are they? They are dead. Then Polkadot, dead. Tezos, dead. Oh my God, where are they? Then EOS and any other chains you could remember, are all them dead? ZK Sync, what is happening with ZK Sync after the airdrop? Nothing. So there's going to be just a couple chains to solve our needs, and that's it. And if you need to build any interoperability solution between like 5 or 10 chains, that's amazing, but not 200.
I disagree. I think that TradFi is going to come in with, and they're going to build tons of different chains.
I think every fintech company will have their
exactly.
chain.
They're going to do their own. And we just need to go back to what happened like before Web3, right? Or crypto. And, in sort of TradFi or just traditional IT architectures, you have data integration happening at the database layer. And you can stream data between databases. You can basically do integration at a platform as a service integration layer in the middleware, or you can do integration at the application layer. That's all happening right now in all of these mobile apps and databases and middlewares that you've got in the traditional space, and it's going to happen in our space as well. I don't think you can say it's all going to happen at the interop mainnet level, or whether it's something like layer 0, or whether it's just happening at the sort of Zerion or MetaMask swaps level. All of these things are going to be tried. They're all going to, and some interops are going to work at certain levels, but I think you just got to let it happen and work out which ones are best for which use cases.
I don't think so, because there is no M&A yet, normal M&A deals in our market. We are too early. Then Microsoft or Facebook or whatever big company just came and say, buying you, you'll get out, and buying you. And that's it.
I think it's like I can kind of see both sides, but the nuance I feel like is important to recognize is that what you're saying, Vlad, is very common for consumer applications. And you can, like, the example is like, well, what other social networks do we use? Is anybody still on MySpace? No, because it's gone, even though it had 400 million users at the time of acquisition. Social behavior and consumer applications have consolidation, and we're basically on Twitter and Facebook exclusively, and maybe the third thing.
No, but come on.
No.
You've got the emergence of TikTok.
No, I'm on your side. I'm on your side.
Like, every new generation comes with their own.
I'm proving your
right?
point. I'm saying my argument is that chains are actually not social apps. So it's okay for a finance company to have a user base of 100,000 people only and still exist and not go into billions, and they can still exist for perpetuity. And that's your argument for it.
Yeah.
There could be thousands of
Imagine,
chains
imagine
still.
a world where someone said, like, all these new databases are dead. The only two that are ever going to exist are Oracle and IBM. We'd be screwed, right? You know, we've got to have new stuff come in, and it's going to change, and we're going to have like evolution, and it's going to be natural, and there's going to be friction to getting these new databases integrated. But it's like, God forbid that we'd be stuck in that world of like
No,
two
but-
old legacy databases, and that's everywhere. Everything's stuck on that. You know, obviously those databases did have a ton of stuff, and they still have a ton of stuff there because it's legacy.
I think the right analogy is banks, not open source software or consumer software. Because you can still have a neobank, and you will still have the traditional banks that are government sanctioned, and they could only have a few million users or 100 million users, and they'll still exist. And they have to still figure out how to interoperate with each other. And that's kind of the right way of thinking about this, because now, especially in Europe, it takes even less time and money to launch a new bank, because you can use someone else's infrastructure, and that's got the same analogy for I can just launch a network, I'll outsource some of the financial pieces to somebody else, and none of my problems are solved. I'm just either delegating or coming up with a new operation or restricting access to certain things.
I think it's quite fascinating because, in a way, with the point of decentralized networks and cryptocurrency, we're trying to democratize the internet. But we've gotten to the point where users are dictating how we build servers. Like, it's almost like we're telling people that, like, Facebook, Twitter, like Pinterest, Tumblr, like these web platforms are all going to use the same server framework. They're all going to build the same modules. Like, we're dictating things of how these CTOs are going to build their application, and they all have to work the same way. And this makes no sense because the way internet works is
Are we dictated in permanent loss term?
No.
Are
No,
we
but-
dictated out of these
But
things?
when you think about it, like when the internet is built, it's built around communication layers. People standardize HTTP, TCP, IP, WebSockets, QUIC. All of these protocols is what you communicate between the servers. Know how you build the servers themselves. Yes, SQL is the most popular database framework, but it doesn't mean that all servers work the same. That's how blockchains are kind of, everything is going to be VM, everything is going to be Solana.
So maybe then, sorry,
Oh no, I just wanted to follow up on that, but like in this analogy, I feel like we still lack that HTTP to talk between
Yes.
the chains,
So,
right?
so we still need a communication protocol that everybody agrees on. And maybe my kind of question there is, well, what's wrong with intents?
Because
That was a big question.
There's no standard for them yet.
no, there hasn't been.
There are no good
So all of you
intents
speaking
yet.
at the same time, this is great.
There are no good intents yet. Every intent protocol you would take a look at right now, they are like all
So
different.
specifically, like, why is it not good, and what makes it a good intent protocol? If we
Yeah.
know it's not good, why don't we just
Yeah.
fix it?
Most of the implementations, if you would check their documentation out, they would not explain you why they did this or why they have this set of features and then don't have this set of features. But yeah, I believe the competition here is something what would make those protocols available. Like in 3-5 years, we would have something amazing. Right now, not yet.
Like, this is me personally asking this question because I'm like now curious. Like, specifically, like, what is not in a good shape? Like, when you submit an intent, what do you think is broken that requires like multiple solutions or hacky ways of going around it? Like, how will magically 2 years from now things be better?
Yeah, I think intents should be built on top of like a better abstraction, like a arbitrary call abstraction, maybe. Maybe they also should serve an ability to make arbitrary calls and the arbitrary set of calls with passing arguments to each other via only call data. So you can compose call data on backend and execute this complex set of calls passing data from one to another or something. This is also probably part of intents protocol or part of it. And I mean, there are like different things which should be implemented in a like pretty abstract way and the more powerful way. But we have some things in some protocols, but we don't have them all together in one place. And someone who explained like why it should be done like this, because it offers a lot of things, or like why it's better. For now, you can only find like tens of different implementations, and everyone calling themselves intents protocol, and it's not clear why they made some decisions, or is it good or better. Comparing them to each other is also difficult.
I think there is an attempt to standardize that, right? I think there's some EIP 7638 I might say the numbers wrong, but it's like roughly that, where it's basically the proposal to have the like unified structure of like what an intent should
Is
be.
that the Ethereum Foundation Intents Initiative? Is that the EIP you're referencing?
I'm not sure
Open-
who like
open
actually
intents
posted
framework?
that. Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. And I think that's really what we need, because like if we all agree on like a single format of like what intent should be, which is like abstracted enough, then we can build on top of that. And then like solvers can compete how they can actually work with different chains. How chains are implemented is not going to matter as well, but we'll have that single standard how we talk to each other, and I think that will honestly solve lots of things out there.
But I personally would like to see, like, yes, those standards are useful, but I think that the biggest problem is always like when you have these solutions, like for example, Superchain is going to be interconnected with superchains and going to have its own security console, and then Arbitrum has Orbit. Everyone is trying to build a security model for securing these intents. What if layer ones are not about securing the rollups themselves, but about securing the intents? And actually the rollups become like more fragmented, and the most valuable part is actually the security between rollups.
We just stick to message passing that are signed and
Yeah, so the beacon chain, for example, instead of focusing on security for the rollups themselves, it would focus on the security between the rollups. That actually would be a great selling point, because then we're capturing value whenever it transacts between rollups. And that would transact value into the layer one itself. And then Solana could mimic this, and then they would have their own layer one interoperability and have a bunch of layer two Solana. But then the value capture would be on the cross-chain part. Because all of these cross-chain interoperabilities, what I don't like is that we always depend on someone else's security, whether it's like Wormhole or Layer Zero, Hyperlane, Axeler. We're just passing the buck to someone else.
But what about if like
Sorry, yeah, I agree. The thing that cross-chain thing should be non-custodial, finally. That's why we have this hackathon, actually. Because it's not possible to build within any company. Only like cumulative efforts of all the hackers can build this. Like it's actually tens of implementations for tens of different ecosystems.
Yeah, but then I think one take on that, which I think is not perfect but like more realistic, is that solvers can just take the risk of the protocols. Because if you're in business of like solving this intent, it's okay to assume certain risk, because that's how you make money, and it's like it's a numbers game. Like not every, like it's not gonna broke every time. Like not every user will try to scam you. So I think if solvers are ready to take the risk of like something breaking along the way, and like in an intent system where like they first do the task, whatever provides the asset that the user wants, and then sort of prove that back to claim the asset from the user, which is like the second step. We make sure that user is always safe, the risk is on the solver, and they just account that into that model when they like kind of solve that.
But then yes, that's great. Sounds very nice in theory, but then like if you pass, the more risk you pass to the solver, the more like the slippage is higher. Like so you're actually hurting the user experience, because now every time you cross chain, like you're losing. Imagine you're passing the same token back and forth and it evaporates as you're like.
No, but
what
I mean
would
it's
happen.
true. Like they would price in the risk, but then if you have like healthy competition there, you have a bunch of solvers assuming different risks. I mean, I don't know, like I never tried to really build a model of like what the fees would be, but it sounds like it's more feasible.
it's a possible risk.
It's
but
possible, yeah.
also an interesting approach. Maybe kind of just to end this, like the thing I was going to ask everybody, and it doesn't matter what order you guys go in, but the thing here that we have to still kind of address is, well, how do we actually make cross-chain communication better, whether it's for DeFi or anything else? Majority of crypto, we believe, will stick to DeFi, and that's fundamentally by nature. But what do we think we can do better here? Like whether it's like what you're doing as a company to what your wish list is, what do you kind of think lets us achieve very high security and very good UX for sending things between cross chains?
Yeah, I think the safest way to pass messages across different blockchains is not to pass them at all. That's why we're focusing on atomic swaps idea and protocol. And regarding the message passing in general, I think that's why we have to improve layer 2s. We have to add new instructions to let them be more connected to layer 1. So message passing from
Give an
layer
example of what that instruction should do.
yeah, it's like L2 slot, L2 static call, or like whatever other instructions are being proposed to improve communication among layer 1 and layer 2s. Because actually every attempt to build communication layer for any chain ended up to a custody solution. It's either proof of stake, either proof of authority, either just multi-sig, or some people call
Restaking.
it MPC or restaking. Like, yeah, I mean, the funds for being, they could be restake, stake, or like whatever. I mean, all these solutions, they're, yeah, custody solutions actually, where a subset of users are like deciding what they want. Is it message is correct or not? And yeah, I think that the only way to improve this on a like whole ecosystem, at least ecosystem which want to have it, like layer 1 and layer 2s can have this improved communication over a new set of instructions which can improve this.
Very solid recommendation. Who wants to go next?
I think from our perspective, what we're not trying to solve for cross-chain interop at the layer 2 at this stage. I think it will become an area of focus. At the moment, we're like trying to do that more at the application layer, at the wallet layer.
Maybe even your wish list of what would make things easier for you to coexist with other L2s in a nicer way.
It's probably a bit beyond my subject matter expertise, but I think I think the migration towards based rollups and native rollups could help. But to be honest with you, there are people a lot more educated on those topics. But I think that feels like a sort of progression to get away from the these sequencers that are like running on completely different infrastructure.
Yeah, no,
and then we have to
answer.
see what sort of communication layers can be brought in when we start to co-host. But at the moment, yeah, I think it's at the wallet layer that we have to try to hide and abstract away the complexity until we solve either at the asset layer or at the protocol layer.
Makes a lot of sense.
No, I'll just agree with that, to be honest. I think the best we can do right now is just like we need to build the application layer so that it's like aware of all these things. And it's actually much more than just cross-chain. Like even things like account abstraction theoretically give lots of UX benefits. You can like abstract gas away because that's one of the biggest pain points with like cross-chain as well, because one thing you need to bridge the asset, then you also need to bridge the gas token to be able to swap there. So if you're able to abstract at least that part, like not talking about messaging and other stuff, that will already make the UX better. And still the adoption is so slow. So I think the wallets also just need to speed up. And like we are working hard, like we are the wallet, it's also our job to just like incorporate all the tech. Because like right now I feel like there's quite a gap between like what's going on the infra level and then what actually gets adopted on the application layer. And I think ideally we need to bring that closer. And like from the wallet perspective, honestly, sometimes it's just like a bit hard because there's so many competing solutions and we are always in that state. We either need to pick one who might be losing and not be there around, or we need to integrate 10 different solutions, which is like 10x work to address some problem, and that's just painful. I don't think that should be the case.
Well, majority of us, I think, have worked a lot in startups. We understand the difference between agile development versus waterfall development, but it always feels like every time we talk about this problem, we want to like start from the end and like work at like what is the ideal scenario and let's try to build that. Like realistically, if we tackle this problem, like you said, arbitrary calls, that's the end goal, right? But what if we can do interoperability for tokens alone? Then we have like wormhole, layer 0. But Ethereum, like as a layer 1, if we could even make ETH interoperable, like just the native gas token,
that would be great.
Compatible.
it would already be such a big achievement. Then we go one layer up. Now we make ETH on layer 2s interoperable, and then we make ERC20 tokens interoperable. Eventually, we'll get to smart contract arbitrary calls. But every time, every forum goes into discussion is arbitrary calls. And it's such a big project to tackle that it just gets on and on and on and on. Let's make ETH interoperable. Just ETH. Nothing else.
I think that's what we should meme on Twitter this week. And by 2030, we'll have change.
I don't know. I'm not the interoperability guy, not the expert there. I think I barely agree with what you're saying. In my fantasy, I think all of those 200 chains gonna be dead. Maybe 10 of them will survive. Why? Because they will run out of funds. That's easy. That's what happened with all of the companies in the Web 2. And the best example here is the only one company which making chips for all of the phones here, all of the tech here is a TSMC. And two companies that doing the chips, but way, way more worse than TSMC. And there's only one company in the world which is doing the factory things for TSMC. So all of the factory supplements across the lithography, and that's called ASML, the company in Holland. If someone gonna burn this company, we're gonna have 10 years with 16 iPhone, and no more 17 iPhone and 18 iPhone. So there is a monopoly and the duopoly, and the market's going there. That's the one thing. The second thing, I think across those 10 chains which survive, it could be some kind of restaking thing in general, which could take all other stakes and which could manage the interoperability connections. And I agree, ETH, interoperability of ETH, I cannot even say this word. Who is the person who said interoperability? But ETH there, that's amazing to have it. It's gonna be very good first point at the beginning. I have a request for you. Could you, in the end, say all of our names and titles like you're doing it on East Global?
It's a very specific request. Okay. Well, we got all the answers. I want to thank Vlad from Ton, Pedro from Wallet Connect, Alex from Zerion, Ian from Linea, and Anton from 1inch. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you all later.
You know what he obviously doing? He naming 200 teams in a one breeze.